Welcome to the space weather. There's lots of stuff to cover. No screwing around. We've got a ton of electrons coming out of there. Very high relativistic electron flux levels. We're not going to get into that too much because there's way too many things to cover on this early edition of the space weather, otherwise known as space weather. We're going to give it a little pause here. We will be back in about 2 minutes. And this track is called La Tour de Chance. Anyway, here's your 171 angstrom view of the sun. We are showing up in the chat momentarily. All right, and who am I logged in as? How many of you folks have way too many passwords and logins? Oh, man. We have got passwords on top of passwords on top of passwords. All right. And we are about to be joining the chat on passwords. And don't get any death echoes. All right. So tons of stuff to cover. Let's get moving. Here's the sun on 304 angstroms. See some major activity over there on the limb. Let's look at just today. We're going to bring up a custom image here in 304. So there's just today's activity. It's about 7 hours worth there. Are we looking at the low res here? Oh, I got the low res. I apologize. I thought it looked a little murky. There we go. So we've got a very strange song playing here called Power Bait. I'm not sure when this one came out, but it's got a bunch of sound effects from the online multiplayer first-person shooter Wolfenstein Enemy Territory. That's why you keep hearing a guy saying he needs a medic. when we get together and play that game, there are a lot of medics needed. So we see quite a bit of activity coming out of that active region there. Still interested to see whether or not it's a sunspot, and a bunch of filaments dancing around. The main ones are associated with that active region. And let's get out the Epic pen. Pardon my messy desktop. I was expecting company. At least you don't have to see that very long and be horrified at how many icons are on it. All right, let's go back and look at another view here. We'll look at 94 real quick for that same period. And there's that active region. We do see a significant increase in the 10.7 centimeter radial flux. It's now at 74. So we pride ourselves on reporting on things on this channel long before everybody else, such as the loss of 40% of the U.S. grain stores. But that's another story. So the solar flux has increased. 10.7 centimeter radial flux is now at 74. If you haven't heard it, now you have. Oh, what up, Henrik? Nice. Welcome, Henrik, book addict, Mr. Keebler, and Steven Jackson. Yes. And Dick Duché. Dick Duché. Is that Dick Duché or Dick Dusher? Great name. All right. And while we have this loaded up, let's just look at the colored magnetogram. Not going to see very much on it, but you do get the first glimpse of that active region right there. And it looks quite active. I can see some blue coming through there. So look at the current magnetogram also in full res. So there's significant magnetic mixing right on the leading edge of that thing. And it is not reverse polarity, by the way. That is a cycle 24 associated plage or sunspot, probably sunspot. But it could be a giant plage. When we see umbra, we'll let you know. All right, so let's move on here. Do the real-time solar wind. All right, so we had a commenter yesterday ask us why a negative BZ is associated with earthquakes. And the theory is, I believe, among electric universe type people who understand electric universe, the theory is the negative BZ is associated with earthquakes due to the current flow. Because the current flows through the planet. Here, I'll draw you an image, folks. Here's the Earth. Here's the solar wind. Here are your field-aligned Birkeland currents. They go right through the planet. Here's where most of your satellites are. The ones that are measuring solar wind. And as this current flows through, there's a polarity associated with it. And because this is a Birkeland current, there's energy going both ways. So each one of these currents has a negative to positive flow and a positive to negative flow nested within it. if that makes sense. And let me get rid of all this stuff because there's too much stuff on the screen. Anyway, that's why we think that the negative BZ is associated with earthquakes. And we've got some really weird music playing.
Okay, I'm the bat. I can take my lumps for a while.
And now I think we've got a cut from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I'm sorry. Twitter. Whiner. Railer. Heartbeat.
All right, enough of that. We don't want to get banned. Please don't ban us. We're already shadow banned enough. Give us time. We'll get banned from anything. Good morning, Mr. Keebler. Florida. Hey, book addict, Steven Jackson. Yeah, all right. Everybody's shouting out their locations. I appreciate that. Anyway, we see a dancing phi angle here. We're not expecting any more of these type coronal hole magnetic connections for a while, as we see a high level of activity which tends to hold back the magnetohydrodynamics of the sun's interactions. We do see a very, very low solar wind density. We are now down to 2.59 protons per cubic centimeter, that is. And the solar wind speed has dropped down a bit to 426 kilometers per second. Now, we did show you these ridiculous images from sounding rockets. If you're not familiar with that, hey, look it up. It's called the Azure program. They inject a bunch of stupid chemicals like strontium and barium that cause people to think chemtrails are coming out of planes up into the ionosphere. And it's because it's to get data about what's going on with the upper atmospheric winds and the very high layers. I just wanted to show you the 10.7 centimeter radio flux. This is going to be up to 74. This site's just not updated yet, but you are because you're watching our channel. And we are above estimates. This is the forecast, and we are above the forecast. And for that, we thank you. We don't really want a solar minimum. It's not good for people's health. Just putting it out there, folks. And next, we will leave links to this later. This is an article about the sounding rockets for all of y'all who are super freaked out about it. I'm not a fan, but hey, whatever. They're studying the winds in layers of the atmosphere that they don't understand very well. So give them some credit. Next, we'll head to spaceweathernews.com, I think. Holy crow, I guess I'm way zoomed out. There we go, that's better. So we already see some X-ray flares. We see a series of B flares coming out of that active region. And man, oh man, do we have a lot of stuff to cover. So we appreciate your patience as we also see a wild spike in the magnetometer. Probably some anomalous data there, folks. Check it out. Not a normal reading. And it looks like the GOES 15 is still reading like that. Now, I can't remember if that's the one that we had the problems with before, but I think it is. That satellite might be damaged because we had that thing showing almost no magnetometer. I mean, almost 0 nanotesla on the 15. Let's hope it's not damaged. We prefer to see both and not only have one line on this graph. So the KP's at 2, and we're seeing very high electron flux levels. Now, these are not the relativistic electron flux levels. These are the, well, this actually does include some relativistic ones here. You're looking at the greater than or equal to 2 or the greater than or equal to 0.8 mega electron volts on both the 14 and the 15. Now, It is possible that the magnetometer is damaged on the 15, but the instrument that measures the electron flux is not. And we're assuming they're not the same instrument. We don't want to spend all day researching that. Now, in August, we did have a very, very high electron flux levels. Let me turn this down a little bit because I'm yelling. We did have very high electron flux levels in August of 2018. And it was for an extended period of time. We saw extended charging hazards. So we're seeing those start up. And so that's something to keep an eye on, because we're going to get satellite drag and we're going to get big GPS errors. So be prepared for that. And you see the F2 layer. Man, what happened here? Did we get old data again? I just loaded this page 10 minutes ago. All right, no technical difficulties allowed here. Okay, yeah, that was legit. All right, so the electron flux actually has dipped a bit, and we are expecting this to go back up because the higher energy level electron flux readings right now are very high, very high. The warning level is 1,000, and we were at 11,000 last I checked. And I believe that was for the 200 mega electron volt ultra relativistic electron flux. So don't worry about that too much, folks, because the F2 layer is looking totally normal. So again, here's a page that scrolls by itself. Thank you. All right, there's your auroral forecasts. And I want to show you the graph for those relativistic electrons. Here's the greater than 2 mega electron volt fluence. And we did cover this back here in August. We had very, very high levels for an extended period. So we don't want to get too into the weeds on that. What that is, it's just a measurement of electron density. There's your comparison of solar cycles. Let's move on, because we don't want this stream to last all day. After all, it's Sunday morning and we have a lot of things to do. Just like you do, folks. Incidentally, we have figured out how to put some of our services behind a paywall, and we'll be rolling that out later. So there's a little teaser for you. We can't tell you exactly what it's going to be, but there is a model now adopted. So here are your magnetosphere movies. First, the velocity. And we did look up how this is measured, and we're going to go into that in a minute. Here is the density. And we see that very low density solar wind coming in there, represented in the light colors from the left, as we are, last I looked, below 3 protons per cubic centimeter solar wind density. And here's the pressure. So the Earth is in a pre-charging state right now. It's willing to accept a lot of charge. So there's the pressure, and yeah. It's not particularly charged at this point because of the very low density of the solar wind. And it's releasing a bunch of energy out of the magnetotail. So we see a couple little perturbations there, nothing too crazy. Look at the ground magnetic perturbations. Man, I guess I know how to DJ after all. After all, my initials are DJN. My mom tasked me with doing this from birth. I came out of the womb and she said, "Play me a song." So yeah, we're throwing some multidisciplinary skills into the videos, folks. There's your ground perturbations from the poles. And I'm going to get back to that question we had about the negative BZ in just a minute. But first, I'm going to do an advertisement for... I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do an advertisement yet. All right. So, let's cover this again now. Here's the solar wind. Here's the bow shock. Here's your field-aligned Birkeland current. The Earth acts as a semiconductor. Here's your other field-aligned Birkeland current. One is predominantly positive, one is predominantly negative, and they both go both ways. So there's a current like this that comes through both of those sides and then goes through the whole planet both ways. There's a charge associated with one. Let's just say, for sake of this illustration, that this is positive and that this is negative. When you have a negative BZ, this one is the dominant feature. When you have a positive BZ, this is the dominant feature. And that affects the way this current goes through the planet. I hope that helps, because that's a plausible explanation of why the negative BZ is associated with earthquakes. And I'm trying to zoom back in. There we go. There are the ground perturbations. Keep in mind these are delta B measurements, which are changes in the B field. And we're talking about the B field of the Earth. And we're not going to get into the weeds whether that is the interplanetary magnetic field or not, because that's for a different video. All right, and let's go to the next tab here, which is the cosmic rays. So we're going to look at Apatity, which is a Russian monitor, as Moscow does not return data anymore. Let's zoom out a little bit. All right, there we go. So we actually do see a little uptick there in the past couple days, but not as high as it was 2 weeks ago. Here's Barentsburg. And we see a little spike in Barentsburg, but similar to the Apatity monitor. Let's look at Athens, Greece. Trying to make the videos more aesthetically pleasing for you folks, which is why we've got everything hidden. Little uptick going on right now in Athens. Let's look at Mexico City next. And we'll look at this later and see if it matches what Athens had to say. Here's Oulu, which is in Finland. And thanks viewers for telling me how to pronounce this word. It's pronounced Oulu. Here's DOMC Antarctica. Highest levels in 30 days in Antarctica, at least at the DOMC monitor. And the DOMB, a similar uptick in cosmic rays, but not as high as 2 weeks ago. So there's some interesting data for you. Note, we are at lower levels than we were in 2010. Now let's look at a whole bunch of Gong 2 maps here, because I'm very interested in these, and I haven't looked at them yet myself. So It'll never be now again. So thanks for tuning in. There you have that. The data is 1 hour and 51 minutes old. And we have a heavily active region here over by stereo A. Now this synoptic map distorts the hell out of the poles, but that actually gives you higher resolution. So it's what you'd call a double-edged sword if you want to use unnecessary characterizations. Let's look at the line of sight field plot. You're going to see the B field being pulled around by that incoming active region, I'm sure. Let's play it and watch it happen. All right, not a lot going on there. Although the South Pole looks extremely powerful. The coronal hole down there is huge, by the way, folks. The solar polar South Pole coronal hole is gigantic. Here's the normal view we look at, the top view ecliptic plane field plot. Again, the data is about 2 hours old. Let me just show you the last frame here. So we're within about 24 hours. I'm going to say 18 to 24 hours of crossing the current sheet, where we see a magnetic polarity flip in terms of the solar wind. This is being attenuated a lot by that incoming active region. So let me reanimate that so you understand what I'm talking about. Watch the green field, which is the North Pole. It's not Santa Claus, but it's bringing some extra activity, and we already see X-ray flares, and it's nowhere near face of the Earth yet. Again, we've got a lot of stuff to view. Let's show you helioviewer.org. If you weren't aware, it's pretty good. First thing we're going to do is not look at SDO. We're going to look from stereo A. There's the 171 angstroms view. And that's your incoming region. There's your close-up. If you want to see how you fit in, there's the Earth scale. And I don't know what song's going to play next, so I guess I'll have to check. Oh, we are out of music. Oh my goodness. That wasn't very good. All right. Put a couple extra tracks in here for you as we close this video out. We have a couple more tabs open yet and a couple important stories to cover, so stick with us. We're going to look at solar ham, and we're going to check out the LASCO C2. I'll leave it there so we can see the date stamps. And we can already see that active region rising on the coronagraph. So there's going to be a little bit of activity rising. Next, let's talk about economics. The flooding that's recently occurred in the central U.S. has caused the destruction of 40% of the U.S.'s grain stores. So let that sink in. 40% of U.S. grain stores were lost. Let's look at the commodities markets and see if they've priced it in yet. Here's wheat. Here's the 1-year chart for wheat. You think that's priced in, folks? How about corn? Here's a 1-year chart for corn. You think that's priced in, folks? Let's look at the 5-year. You think that's priced in? 40% of U.S. grain stores lost. Do you think food prices are going to rise? And do you think the stock market's going to crash? We were calling out the price of silver at 14 bucks. Right here. Right there. Go back and watch our video. We had videos exactly on those days. 13.955. Do you think the loss of 40% of U.S. grain yields is priced into a $15.08 per ounce silver price? How about the gold price? Let's check that out. There's the 1-year chart. Let's look at the entire chart for gold. Do you think it's a coincidence that it happened right here? I mean, obviously it's not a coincidence, but the point is, well, oil's rising, so it is getting priced into the market. But man, oh man, it's taken a long time to sink in. So let it sink in, folks. Food prices are going up. Stock prices are going down. Disclaimer, this is not actual investment advice, and I am not licensed currently to provide investment advice of any kind. Let's look at cryptos while we're here. As cryptos have gone up in price. And yeah, Bitcoin. Here's the 1-year for Bitcoin. Now, crypto traders are a little bit ahead of this stuff because crypto traders do things like listen to my videos or maybe even watch them. All right, and let's just look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Here is the 1-year chart for that. Do you think a 40% loss of U.S. grain stores is figured into a $26,000+ Dow Jones? And do you think it's priced into a much, much more overvalued NASDAQ, consisting of a bunch of bubble investments purchased with cheap money from the Federal Reserve? Solar experts predict the sun's activity in solar cycle 25 to be below average, similar to cycle 24. Hear that, folks? That is a grand solar minimum prediction right there. Cycle 24 is/was a super weak cycle. And I think I'm in the chat, but I don't know if I'm in the chat. So anyway, super important article. It just came out on April 5th. We'll leave this pause for a minute, and I welcome you to pause your screen. I will move it down each page so you can read the whole article. Now keep in mind, A weak solar cycle is not necessarily an indication that there's going to be no solar outbursts. That's not the way it works. You can get a huge solar outburst during a weak cycle. All right, I'm going to move it down. It's a pretty short article, and I can leave it on the screen long enough for everybody to read the whole thing. I'll even move the Epic pen for you. How's that for a value-added service? Now, a coronal mass ejection, according to a 2013 study, would cause between 600 billion and 2.6 trillion in damages, particularly to the electrical infrastructure, such as a power grid. If a CME that was launched in 2012 was directed toward Earth, it would have been just like the Carrington event. This is what a real halo eruption looks like. If you see this, stock up on batteries and everything else you think you might need to survive. Beans, bullets, and Band-Aids, because that ain't what you want to see. Now, that view's from Stereo A, which was hammered by that solar storm. And it was the fastest coronal mass ejection ever captured. And we're talking in terms of velocity here, folks. That's what a fast halo ejection looks like. The reason we call it a halo is because if it's coming right towards you, it looks like a halo. This is the Stereo A chronograph from 2012. And let me go back. All right, the back button worked. So anyway, predicting a cycle similar to 24. And let's just hope it's not a weaker cycle. We'll leave links. Check out Zero Hedge talking about CT ammunition. How about some CT ammunition, folks? Check out the weird rounds. They're not as weird as you might think, but they're pretty weird. So CT ammunition appears to be in the process of being adopted by the U.S. military, and there's what the rounds are going to look like. We'll leave links to this Zero Hedge article also. These are designed to penetrate the most advanced body armor at very long distances, out to 600 meters. Here's another story for Zero Hedge. Tick, tick, tock. 2019 recession coming. You know why? It's because of too much cheap money, especially in the tech sector. Now, I'm not talking down the tech sector. I want to see the tech sector advance, obviously, especially considering that I'm making YouTube videos. So anyway, we'll put links to that article after we're done with the live stream. You'll find it in the description if you're not viewing live. And welcome, Bakasmati Papa Giorgio. Here's another Zero Hedge article. Mysterious drug-resistant germ that probably none of you heard about at all, and I didn't either until this morning at about 3 o'clock. Urgent threat is quietly sweeping the globe. All right, let's move on. We'll leave links to this one also, because we're keeping you informed here before anybody else does. Real quick. Ever heard of cycling? Well, head to theveloshop.net if you haven't, because there they're going to have a big sale, a giant sale, and they're going to have all kinds of insane bikes for people to purchase at massive discounts during, I guess I could say, our grand opening. And I'm getting a 2019 one of these. Shoo! All right, enough of that. Let's go back. Let's go back to the browsing data again. We're going to look at just today. 8 hours and 15 minutes at... what should we do here? How about the 193 angstroms? We'll look at the coronal hole situation right before we cover volcanoes and earthquakes and then close this thing out. All right, let me get off the full screen here. We'll bring out the satellite view to make it a little more visually pleasing. All right, so here's 24 hours. We've got a 4.1 in Mexico, quite far north. Got a 4.7 in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. There we go. Looks like an earthquake uptick. Geez. 5.2. Largest quake around that area for a long time. I don't know when. 4.8 in Chile. 6.3 in East Timor. Right in the area that we warn nearly every day. And by the way, those warning areas are right here. You've had a multitude of deep earthquakes in these areas, and you've had an ongoing 7+ magnitude earthquake drought. Sadly, that 6.3 is not a relief of pressure, but an indication of increased pressure. So if you're in these areas especially, have an earthquake plan and try to be an asset in the event of a disaster and not a liability. All right, let me get rid of that. And let's see what was going on with this. If there were any tsunami warnings issued. I didn't really look too closely at where it was located. And no threats. Here's a location. We'll just use this map instead of Google. Sorry, Google. Thanks again for fixing the screen capture software, Google. We give credit where credit's due, even to Google. So there's where that's located. Probably the largest quake we've seen. Let's see. So got a 4.7 right in the same region. Also at depth. So that's a serious warning there. And we're going to look at, okay, there's a 4.4 in Russia. We're going to look at the pressure map in a moment. Here's a 4.7 in Peru. There's a 5.0 in Indonesia. There's a 4.6. Again, no warning issued associated with that. We see a 5.4, a 4.1 at Argentina at depth, 4.8 at Nicaragua, 5.1 northeast of New Zealand, 4.5 at Indonesia, and a 4.2 at Afghanistan. Let's look at windy.com. the low pressure systems. Full screen going. Check it out. Nice. Gonna zoom out. So, no real low pressure systems associated with South America or Central America. There is a bit of convergence over East Central Mexico there, but nothing too anomalous. And over here, we've had this persistent low right here. And it's been just hanging out in that region. Also, it looks like one might be forming right there. Northern Hemisphere viewers, keep in mind low pressure systems rotate clockwise south of the equator. Anyway, if you see a deep quake in your region, check a map like this. If you see a massive low pressure area, like this one up south of the Kamchatka Peninsula, you might be in store for an earthquake. Or the earth might have in store a quake for you. You might have a quake and there'll be yeah, you know what I'm saying. And finally, let's look at volcanoes before we close this thing out. Did we play that one already? I apologize. All right, volcanoes today. I'm going to close my eyes and pick a song. All right, here we go. Oh, man. I don't know about these. These are some questionable tracks, folks. And this one, I'm not even sure if I made this one. I think this might be somebody else. And we are giving no credit to that guy. All right, so here's Ibu with an 8,000-foot ash plume there. Here's Bromo with a 10,000-foot plume there. Tucono, 7,000-foot plume. Sabancaya, Revenador with occasional emissions. Sabancaya with a 23,000-foot plume. Planchon Petaroa, possible weak emissions of ash. And Michael in the South Sandwich Islands, not identifiable. Huh. Isn't that interesting? So that's a new one on the list. And that is located very far south. So a small ash plume was detected from Buenos Aires in January. That's a new one on the list, Michael Volcano. Anyway, here's the sun at 193 angstroms, and it's not looking too coronally holy there. Although there is a triangle of 3 right here in the middle, facing the Earth. Again, this is just today's activity, so this is from about 0 hour UT until about 8:45. We are out of here. Enjoy your Sunday, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to videos. We appreciate your patronage. If you weren't aware, all the music's original. So remember, when you're staring at the sun, don't drink. And if you drink, stare at the sun. Just don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your arteries.